I'm Rex Proctor, and this is another screencast in the series of screencasts for Sports Tech GB. What we're going to cover off in this screencast is how to use the drawing tools and to do some simple animations with those. So sit back and enjoy. Thank you. Now let's jump into my first project by tapping on it. I'm going to drag my toolbar up to about there because what I want you to take note of is the drawing section in the timeline. Now you'll notice there's a small triangle button both in the events and the drawings row. This is your disclosure triangle. So I'm going to tap on that and it's going to point down. So when I use a drawing tool, you're going to notice that instances are created in this section of the timeline. Now let's grab a drawing tool. In the bottom right corner of the movie area, you'll see a pencil button. Go ahead and tap on that and that will show you your drawing tools. You have freehand, line, rectangle, ellipse, a rounded rectangle, text, angle tool, and a ruler. Let's grab a line tool and see how these work. I'm going to place my finger in the bottom left corner of the movie and simply drag it along to the upper right corner. That's how you draw a line. Now what you'll notice in the bottom here in the timeline, an instance has been created. This instance is 3 seconds long. So every time that you do a drawing, an instance will be created at the position of the playhead. So let's see what that does. I'll drag the playhead back a little bit and play through that instance. And you'll notice that the drawing object appears and then disappears according to the length of the instance. So let's zoom our timeline in a little bit and take a look at this instance. It is exactly the same as an event instance. So if I tap on it once, you'll see the vertical bars appear so I can adjust the start and end time. So I'm going to hold my finger in the right area to the right of the vertical bar on the right and just drag that back and forth. And that's how you adjust the timing for when a drawing appears or disappears. So we'll do the same here. Remember, it's just place your finger in there, hold it until the instance is highlighted in yellow. Now I've adjusted that and I hit play and it appears and then disappears. Pretty simple stuff. Now hopefully you're figuring out in your head that, wow, this means that I can animate things. Now you can't animate position and so on, but you can animate the appearance right now. In the future you'll be able to do many more tricks with it, but right now it's just the appearance. All right, so let's do some other adjustments. Let's say that I want to move the line. If you tap on it, you'll get the inspector, but let's not do that for now. And you'll notice that there are knobs. Many of the objects have these knobs and they make it easier to grab onto the drawing. So I will grab the red knob and pull it down. Pretty simple. Now, if you want to move the whole object, just place your finger on it and move it. Don't grab a knob, but just place it anywhere that there isn't a knob. Okay, so I'll move the green down a little bit. And I'm going to open the inspector by just single tapping on the object. You'll notice that the inspector pops up. And these are pretty common properties for drawing objects in most applications. So I'm not going to go over every single one. But here we can apply some stroke to this or change it. Line objects, freehand, angle, and so on are actually, they must have stroke, otherwise they will not appear. You can change the color. And this is your stroke width. So if you want a little fatter line, try 7, and you'll see that that line gets a little bit bigger. Now with the line style panel, if you want to get rid of it, just tap anywhere in the inspector and it will disappear. You can apply line endings. And you can set the geometry manually using the origin and size input boxes there. You can lock by sliding the lock. Lock's convenient when you have a lot of objects and you don't want to inadvertently move one. So I don't really care to do that right now. Okay, so that's pretty easy. Now, a couple things about duplication. So let's say that I want a second line exactly the same, but I want to change its location, possibly its colors and so on. So what I'll do is I'll place my finger on it and hold and then pull away. It's about a second and a half, somewhere in there. And you'll notice in the timeline that the object was duplicated. And the neat thing about it is a new row is created so you can apply any of the properties of the button. So you could change the color, you can change its position and so on without affecting the drawing object that it was copied from. Now let's show you a couple things about deleting. There are two places to delete. I want to get rid of this. So I'm going to delete it out of the timeline. So if I tap on that and I do another single tap, I'm tapping on the word line, I can delete that object right out of the timeline. Now why I wanted to make mention of this is sometimes you'll have a lot of drawings and they'll be sitting on top of each other, crisscrossing, and it may be difficult to grab that with your finger up in the movie view area. So you can delete it down in the timeline. You can also change its color. So that's a good way to delete, or you can simply delete here. Now, another note is when you tap on some objects, according to their location, the inspector may not come up in full. So just note that this is a scrollable object, so if you need to get those properties quickly, you can. I'm going to go ahead and delete this object. And I'm going to show you the second way of creating objects or duplicating objects. So let's use text, for instance. Now I select my text tool, and you'll notice in the bottom right corner, that's your tool indicator. So it has a T. This means that the next gesture that I do on the movie will be a text object. So I'll drag that out and we'll place that text. Now with text you can change the font, the text color, and so on. I'm just going to simply change this to wow, great play. And I'll move that to the upper right corner here. Now you'll notice in my timeline it's created an instance. So let's say that I want that to appear in the same position multiple times. What I can do is, just like instances, I can actually code a drawing object. So I've placed my playhead just right after it, and I'm going to tap on the code button right here and then drag the playhead along and then press it again. Now you'll see as I drag over this and then play it back that wow, great play appears and then hides and then reappears again in the exact same position. Now the thing to note about this method is, let me scroll that back, is if I change the properties of this instance, so let's say we're going to move it here, that will also apply to the other instance in the row. So anything that's changed, color, position, stroke, and so on, affect the entire row. So there's two ways to kind of duplicate, if you will. So you can have a single object show and hide, but it will always be all the same properties, or you can duplicate it by holding and then pulling away from it to create a second row, and then you can change all the properties. All right, a couple other drawing object items that I want to cover off is the rounded rectangle. I'll create a rectangle here, and you'll notice the knob. Let's grab the knob, and if I drag the knob, I can change the rounded rectangle corners. So that's kind of a clever little way of doing this. Okay, so let's go ahead and get rid of that object. So I'll tap on the object and delete it. The angle tool is quite clever also. So I drag my finger down and then move it in another direction, and you'll see that the angle is created. So it's a pull and then switch into a direction. And you can grab any of the knobs and move the angle around. Something about the inspector here that you may not run across is you can set these for the project, and you can set the properties, I mean to say, for each of these tools. And every time you use that tool, that property will be chosen. So let's change this to red because I want all of my rectangles to be red. And you'll see there that next to rectangle, that's now red. So the next time I grab that tool, that property will be remembered. Now let's get rid of our angle. And let's talk about the lock tool. Now you may want to continue to draw using a single tool. And you see the lock button here. So let's grab that. And this is for the line tool. And you'll notice in the bottom right corner that a lock has appeared next to the tool indicator. This means that I can do sequential things with the drawing object. So I can line those up and I can continue to draw lines. Now if you want, you can turn that off by pressing the lock. And let's go ahead and get rid of those. Let's get rid of those here down in our timeline. So we look at both methods. And we've cleaned up our drawing and we can go back to our projects. And that concludes the drawing tools in SportsTech GB. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us at support@sportstech.com. Thank you.